everyone. Welcome to Live Interactive English. I'm Mike, and today we are going to be looking at stars of the sea. Wow, stars of the sea. I'm thinking Jaws, the famous movie shark. Oh, Nemo, the famous movie clownfish. Well, yes, they are stars of the sea, I suppose you could say, but they are not sea stars, or as they're more commonly known, starfish. Those are the stars of the sea we will be talking about today. And starfish, I kind of think of them in that category of weird but wonderful sea animals that I don't actually know a lot about, right? There's a lot of these really interesting animals. They're not cool like sharks. They're not kind of fun and cute like Nemo. No, they live on the bottom of the ocean. They don't do much. They don't even swim, most of them. They kind of crawl around down there on all the shells and coral. And what do? I'm talking about sea stars, sea cucumbers. What is a sea cucumber? And is a sea cucumber the same as a sea slug? Those are both things. And ooh, what about sea urchins, those kind of spiky ones that taste great with your Japanese sushi? Those are pretty weird. Oh, sea horses. Have you ever seen a seahorse? What a weird animal. Or sea dragons. Yes, they exist. Sea dragons are real too. They're all weird and wonderful creatures, but I don't think there's as many of those out there as there are starfish. There are a lot of starfish out there. They're actually quite interesting, and they are also killers. That's right, they're killers on the ocean floor. So let's find out about sea stars or starfish and find out if they're any danger to humans. I don't think they are, but we'll find out.
One sea animal that draws particular attention for its bright colors and patterns is the starfish. With over 2,000 species, starfish are a common sight in oceans around the world. Yet they are also some of the most misunderstood creatures. Take, for example, their name. Although we call them starfish, they're not really fish. Unlike fish, which have a set of bones running down the middle of their back, starfish are invertebrates. In fact, a more accurate name for starfish is sea stars, since it describes their common shape.
All right, so yes, let's learn about starfish or stars of the sea. Those are the ones we're talking about in our title. So let's jump into the article and see what we can learn. It says, one sea animal that draws particular attention for its bright colors and patterns is the starfish. Absolutely. Everyone knows what a starfish is. They might not be able to tell you much more than that, but most of us, I think if we see a picture, we could say, oh yeah, that's a starfish, but I don't know anything more than that. But they are colorful, they have cool patterns, and of course they have that very unique star shape. It says, with over 2,000 species. That's a lot of different type of starfish. 2,000 different species or types. Starfish are a common sight in oceans around the world. Yeah, actually so common that you can go to a lot of places, go snorkeling, and you'll probably see just as many starfish as you'll see, sea creatures living on the coral. They're almost anywhere that you can go. And I think they also live in warm areas and cold areas. I saw a lot of them at the Vancouver Aquarium in Canada. But they have a lot of starfish there. You can actually pick some of them up. It's really cool. Anyways, so there are a lot of different type of starfish. Yet, however, they're also some of the most misunderstood creatures. We really don't know much about them, and a lot of the stuff you might think you know about them could probably be wrong. We just don't know much about this creature. A creature is an animal. It could be a beast. It could be a wild animal out there. We use this often to talk about slightly weird or strange creatures. If my cat is behaving kind of cat crazy, I might say, what's wrong with that creature? But generally, that's a cat, it's a pet, it's an animal. I wouldn't use creature, but a spider, some weird thing that you don't even know what it is because you've never seen it before. Oh, I hear a creature moving, in the corner of the house or something like that. So it's kind of a mysterious, strange, slightly scary, but maybe not bloodthirsty animal. But still, you might not want it crawling on your arm if you describe it as a creature. That's a little weird. For example, many kinds of creatures can be found at the zoo, from friendly common creatures like elephants to weird creatures like, tarantula spiders or something like that. All right, back to the article. Take, for example, their name. Yeah, okay, starfish. It's a cool name. It's an easy name to remember, but maybe it's actually not a really great name. And that's actually the case. It says, although we call them starfish, they're not really fish. Yeah, they don't swim. They don't have gills. They don't have little fins on their body. Yeah, that's a good point. Unlike fish, which have a set of bones running down the middle of their back, like we do, starfish are invertebrates. We are vertebrates. Cats are vertebrates. Fish are vertebrates. Let's see. Insects are invertebrates. Shrimp and lobster, they are invertebrates. They don't have a backbone, a spine, connecting up to their brain and all that kind of stuff. And starfish, no backbone. They are invertebrates, but fish actually should be vertebrates. So, from a science point of view, calling them starfish is not really accurate. It says, in fact, a more accurate name for starfish is sea stars, which is another name. You can call them sea stars. And that's actually a better, from the science point of view, a better name for them since it describes their common shape, the fact they live in the sea, but it doesn't get it all confused by calling them fish, because to call them fish is not accurate. If something is accurate, this adjective means it's precise, it's true, it's hitting the target, it's not kind of around the target, it's not way off and completely wrong. For example, the scientists need to take accurate measurements for their study. Yes, scientists do need to do that. And looking at the clock, it is now an accurate time to take a break.
Hello， 大家好，我是 Hanny。同学们应该都有看过海星，甚至有在水族馆摸过海星。它们颜色鲜艳，外形特别。那今天课程就要介绍一些关于海星的有趣事实，有些可能会让你很惊讶哦。首先就是海星有超过2000种诶，在世界各地的海洋里随处都可以看到。不过它们也是最常被误解的生物之一。就拿它们名字来看，海星的英文是 starfish， 但是这个名称并不准确啊，因为它们不是真的 fish， 不是鱼类。海星跟鱼类不同，这个海星呢是无脊椎动物，我们用到 invertebrate 来表达无脊椎动物。那如果去掉 in 变成 vertebrate， 就表示脊椎动物。再看到课文单字 creature， 它表示生物啊，动物。Mike 老师提到 creature 常用来指稀奇古怪的动物，像猫跟狗就比较不会用 creature 来描述。那如果是像老师说的这个 tarantula spider 塔兰托大毒蛛这种狼蛛，那也许你就可以用 creature 来描述了。老师刚刚还用到 weird W-E-I-R-D， 它是形容奇怪的、怪异的。下一个单字 accurate， 它是形容准确的、精确的。那补充一下，老师刚刚提到这个海星不像鱼，它没有鱼鳃，没有鱼鳍。那补充一下 gill G-I-L-L， 它可以指这个鱼等等水生动物的那个鳃。还有提到 fin F-I-N， 它表示鳍或者是鳍状物。好，接回到课文中。
In the wild, sea stars can live 35 years on average, but in captivity, they typically live only 5 to 10 years. So the ones kept in zoos or aquariums won't likely live past a decade. You might imagine sea stars feeding innocently on pieces of ocean plants, but they're actually carnivores. They like to feast on shellfish, which sea stars open with the help of tiny suction cups on their limbs. To escape predators, a sea star might tear off its own limbs, but it's no skin off its back. Sea stars can regenerate new limbs. The ability to regrow body parts, along with their fascinating shapes and colors, helps sea stars live up to their name as the brightest stars of the sea.
All right, let's get back to our talk about starfish. They are very interesting. They are not fish, and there are 2,000 different species of them. That's pretty amazing. I'm going to blow your mind even more in about 3 seconds. In the wild, sea stars can live 35 years on average. That's right. If you go to the ocean and you look down and you see a sea star there, it could be up to 35 years old or even slightly older. That's the average. That's amazing. But in captivity, they typically live only 5 to 10 years. Oh, that's not so good. So in captivity basically means not in the wild. If you have a wonderful aquarium at home, or an aquarium or a zoo, or somewhere scientists are studying them, where they can't be out there in the wild in the ocean, they only live 5 to 10 years. That's too sad. But if they are given their freedom, they can live up to 35 years. That's quite a long time. So the ones kept in zoos or aquariums won't likely live past a decade. Yes, there you go. Simple math. A decade, we'll get to that. But an aquarium is basically a zoo for fish. We could use this word to talk about that little thing in your home or in a dentist's office where fish swim around in a glass box. That could be an aquarium. We could also call that a fish tank. But if we're talking about an actual place out there in the world, an aquarium is a large building or set of buildings. People pay to go there. Scientists often do work and research there. But like a zoo, it's basically a place for tourists and interested people to go and see a lot of different type of sea life in their many tanks and stuff like that. There's a great aquarium, I think, down in southern Taiwan. Okinawa's got a famous big aquarium. In Singapore, there's a wonderful aquarium. So aquariums are fun places to go if you're interested in fish, seeing cool fish, or learning about fish. For example, we spent the day at the aquarium and saw all sorts of ocean animals. That's true, I shouldn't just say fish. There'll be crustaceans there, there'll be mammals there, there'll be all sorts of things that live in the water at the aquarium. And a decade, we mentioned that in captivity, starfish live from 5 to 10 years. Well, 10 years is a decade. That's just a word we use to talk about a 10-year period. For example, we could say Bobby hasn't been home in over a decade. Well, I hope he's been traveling or living somewhere and he didn't just go out to buy milk 10 years ago. I'm a little worried about Bobby now. A 10-year period, we haven't seen him. Anyway, back to the article. You might imagine, it says, you might imagine sea stars feeding innocently on pieces of ocean plants, but they're actually carnivores. That's right, they're meat eaters. So they're not down there just feeding on algae and seagrass or stuff like that. No, they like flesh. They like meat. They're bloodthirsty hunters of the ocean. Well, maybe not like a shark is a bloodthirsty hunter, but they do like a nice bit of meat. What type of meat? Not shark. That's a clue. They like to feast on shellfish. Oh yeah, that's slightly easier to catch than a shark. They like to feast on shellfish, which sea stars open with the help of tiny suction cups on their limbs. That is absolutely fascinating and also a little bit terrifying. So kind of like how an octopus has those cups that it can use to attach to things and pull things, sea stars have hundreds or even thousands of those on their arms, and they use those to pull shells open and get to the meat inside. They're eating down there, and it's not as innocent as you might imagine. Innocently is the adverb that we use for innocent, and innocent basically means you have done no wrong. You are not guilty, you haven't broken any law, you haven't done anything that will get you in trouble. So if you do something innocently, you are doing it in a kind way or not in a bad way, certainly. If you innocently make a mistake, You weren't trying to trick someone. You didn't even know that what you were doing was a mistake because you did it innocently, not in a bad way or trying to break the law, trying to do something wrong. No, you basically did it with no hatred in your heart. You did it innocently. For example, Gina laughed innocently at the joke, but she could see that Tom's feelings were hurt. Oh, they made a little joke and Gina thought it was funny, but then she realized Tom might not. Gina laughed, but she did it innocently. She wasn't trying to hurt Tom's feelings, not at all. Okay, back to the article. To escape predators, a sea star might tear off its own limbs. Okay, sea stars are really cool and slightly scary, but it's no skin off its back. Well, okay, now we're talking about if the sea star becomes food for something else, obviously it can't swim away really fast, so it might rip off its own limbs, but it's no skin off its back. Imagine if you're running away from bad guys, they grab your arm and you just rip off your own arm and throw it to them as you run away with your other arm. That's what sea stars can do, but it's no skin off its back. It won't bother the sea star. If we say it's no skin off my nose, we're saying it doesn't bother me at all. Go ahead. Why doesn't it bother the sea star? Sea stars can regenerate new limbs, kind of like a superhero. I think one of the X-Men can regrow body parts. The ability to regrow body parts along with their fascinating shapes and colors help sea stars live up to their name as the brightest stars of the sea and one of the weirdest stars of the sea. So there you go. It can rip off its own body parts and grow them back again like some kind of weird superhero mutant creature. What do you think, guys? What are some other often misunderstood creatures? Good question. What are some of their unique qualities? Well, I mentioned sea dragons, sea horses, sea slugs. These are unusual ocean creatures. Ooh, trumpet fish. Have a look at those. They're pretty weird, but nothing is as weird as the red lip batfish. Have a look at that. All right, guys, we'll see you soon. Bye. Red lip batfish.
在野外，海星平均可以存活35年。不过，如果是饲养在动物园或是水族馆里面的海星，则不太可能超过10年。我们先来看看单字 decade， 它表示10年。那么 aquarium 它表示水族馆或是水族箱。老师在讲到水族馆的时候呢，有提到 crustacean 是指甲壳类动物，还有提到 mammal 则是指哺乳动物。好，那么课文接着提到说，也许我们可能会想象海星它们天真无邪的在吃着海洋植物的碎片，可是其实它们是肉食动物诶，它们喜欢吃贝类，然后呢，海星会用它们那个腕足上面这个小吸盘来帮忙打开贝类。好，我们先看一下 innocently 这个副词表示无辜地或者是故作天真地。那刚刚听到说海星不是吃藻类海草，而是肉食性动物的时候 ，Mike 老师说这听起来有点可怕诶。老师用到 terrifying， 就是 terrifying，terrifying 可以形容是恐怖的、令人害怕的。还有提到 algae，algae 表示海藻、水藻，那它是复数形哦。好，再来文中的这个 suction cup， 它表示吸盘。老师就提到说章鱼也有吸盘，那么 octopus 就是章鱼咯。课文最后写到说，为了躲避掠食者，海星可能会断腕，就是说把他们手弄断的那种感觉，但他并不在乎，反正会再长出新的手腕。这样听起来是不是很酷呢？就很像超级英雄电影里面那种变种生物。那我们可以用到 mutant 这个字 ，mutant， mutant 是形容变种的、突变的。好，再来课文呢，它用到 tear off 来表达撕裂、扯断。那 Mike 老师则是用到 rip off。rip 是拼作 RIP， 那么 rip off 它也有扯掉、撕掉的意思。这边两个重点，我们进入文法时间。 好，来看第一个重点是 no skin off somebody's nose， 这是指说某人不在乎，跟某人无关。好，那么 no skin off somebody's nose 字面意思是不会有皮肤从某人鼻子上掉下来，表示说某人不会受到某事影响，跟某人毫不相干。那也可以把 nose 改成 back。举例来说 ，It's no skin off my nose if you don't believe me。就算你不相信我，我也不在乎，我完全不会受到影响。好，再来看看第二重点是 live up to 的不同意思。第一个，你可以用它来表达符合、达到，像是达到某种期望或是标准。后面常常会接 name 名字、reputation 名声、expectation 期望等等。举例来说 ，She tries hard to live up to her parents' expectations。她努力要达到父母的期望。第二个，你可以用 live up to 去表达履行、实践，像实践承诺，后面就常常会接 promise 或者是 one's word 等等。举例来说 ，He always lives up to his promises。他总是会履行他的承诺。好，以上是这个讲解，同学别走开，马上回来哦。
One sea animal that draws particular attention for its bright colors and patterns is the starfish. With over 2,000 species, starfish are a common sight in oceans around the world. Yet they are also some of the most misunderstood creatures. Take, for example, their name. Although we call them starfish, they're not really fish. Unlike fish, which have a set of bones running down the middle of their back, starfish are invertebrates. In fact, a more accurate name for starfish is sea stars, since it describes their common shape. In the wild, sea stars can live 35 years on average, but in captivity, they typically live only 5 to 10 years. So the ones kept in zoos or aquariums won't likely live past a decade. You might imagine sea stars feeding innocently on pieces of ocean plants, but they are actually carnivores. They like to feast on shellfish, which sea stars open with the help of tiny suction cups on their limbs. To escape predators, a sea star might tear off its own limbs, but it's no skin off its back. Sea stars can regenerate new limbs. The ability to regrow body parts, along with their fascinating shapes and colors, helps sea stars live up to their name as the brightest stars of the sea.
The Maple Garden has been called the lungs of the city. This unique U-shaped ecological green space is both a leisure spot for local residents and an interesting attraction for visitors. One could say that the Maple Garden was a beautiful mistake, since the location was originally designated for the Taichung International Convention and Exhibition Center. However, the Build, Operate, Transfer (BOT) contract was canceled after the foundation was laid. That's when the idea for turning the area into a park was born. After checking out similar projects undertaken overseas, architect Chai Kai-yang coordinated the transformation of the land using soil from Tali River to backfill it. Eventually, the park was finished, complete with an artificial lake, grass-covered slopes, and a bridge. Not just for recreational purposes, the Maple Garden is also good for the city's environment, improving its landscape and air quality, as well as protecting it against flooding. When you stand on the glass observatory deck and look down, the greenery and lake look like a beautiful landscape painting. When it gets dark, the lights of the surrounding high-rise buildings reflect on the lake, while the traffic sounds are quieted in this low-lying park. You can take in the sights in front of you in peace. And on the weekends, you can enjoy listening to street artists playing music. The Maple Garden is a place where you can get away from the crowds and truly relax.